interpreting anybody's words with the actual direct experience, it's not going to be easy. But still, with interest and the researching background and the setting and the nuances of that, we can create the image, and through that we may be able to communicate. So the experience of nirvana, Sage talked about, and other people, I was talking about Meister Eckhart, pointing the same. And my experience resonate to those experiences. So what I want to talk about is the way how I experienced. So let me go through that first, and then talk about what they may mean and what can be done about it. So the experience has been happening back and forth, but one of the major ones was one evening, perhaps 2 o'clock in the morning. I was asleep, I woke up, and then I thought about some incident in business that kind of bothered me, causing me some trouble. I cannot solve it. So the mind is functioning how to deal with it. And it requires relationship and the process of how to communicate, the background of difficulties and the track record and what can and cannot happen. So it's the field of the mind. And I've been talking about two universes, one in the mind and the one which is all of the rest, the universe of how the law of nature or law of universe manifests. As a result, we came up as a human being living like a miracle. Without that, and no mind can explain that. So mind has limitation, but if you think about the way of nature, you can use the word God or Amida to provide how things happen, even to the point of bringing out the wisdom and compassion. So the experience I was talking about is something like this. But before that, let me just explain that I can go in and out to that state of bliss, nirvana, I call it, or the Pure Land, Sage calls it, in and out fairly easily. And the symptom of that experience, subjective experience again, is inner body sensation of body cells happily jumping around, and you relate to that I am alive. Not me as a mind, me as the existence of the whole being is exhibiting the dancing of the cells, jumping around and be happy. So whatever the reason is, I can go in and out, as much as Saichi is talking about going in and out, as much as Eckhart Tolle or the Meister Eckhart talking about the God and the relationship and how that helps him to be away from the suffering, but be in the state of bliss. So that started to happen more often in the last few months. And before that, I had the sense of that all the way back to 22 years ago when I had the awakening experience and I felt the change happen in my whole mind-body construct, which I talked about and written the report and so forth elsewhere. But again, from that and being emphasizing, focusing on compassion and the way of compassion is beyond the mind. And that lead me to get to this state more easily, related to Saichi, Meister Eckhart, and Mykonin, Daisu Suzuki, and so on and so forth. So that's in the background. It's been happening more often. And I feel like I'm living with God or Amida Buddha or the law of nature as my friend or the other part of me, pointing this eye of Eckhart. The eye I see, the God or the law of nature, what's happening, is the eyes that the God will look at me inside. So there's a relationship of me to that universe as one. And that's the sensation, that is connection and subjective experience of blissful sensation, of nirvana or Pure Land. But would that still have a case of me going through the difficulties in the society? And I mentioned about that it's just a game, as Eckhart totally talked about. But still, once you get hooked and the issue is there, it bothers me. When in the daytime, it doesn't bother me as much. But in the nighttime, when I'm sleeping, something happens. Those words and ideas pop up and start to gather some thought, and that causes some level of suffering. So how do I deal with it? Let it be, just like the case of meditation or Saichi, who talks about Amida Buddha. You let go. You let go of yourself, your mind, your being, to be saved by Amida Buddha or replaced by the calm and quiet mind, just a pure awareness. So when I think about that instance, and it happens quite often, whenever those ideas may pop up or the problem may pop up, I go through just sitting or laying down, and in that example, for example, is focus on breathing in and out, and when it happens, your mind is more focused on that breathing, not the subject of the concern. It's not avoiding, but it's going into the different dimension, different universe, where the source of power, energy, creativity exists. I call it the home base and the root of who I am, and that's what the Meister Eckhart talk about the God, or Saichi talk about Amida Buddha. And you can go to that universe with some experience and with trying and focusing on meditation or breathing. A few others I can think about, but for now, I was doing it. But still this mind is functioning when I'm in that state of bliss. So that was an interesting case of me in two universes at the same time. On one hand, I had this blissful sensation throughout the body. On the other hand, I can see my mind clearly, yet I can think about that case causing some trouble. And I thought that was interesting. I am living in two universes in one. Instead of flipping, this is the case of having the observation of the other universe from the universe, the home base, the root of who I am, that I can access to with this blissful sensation. So I stayed in that state for some time, maybe a few minutes, maybe more. And I felt, maybe being playful as I am, I was checking, how much of an influence my mind move may have to this interrelationship of two universes, so to speak. Well, by this time, the discussion may be far-fetched and nobody can understand, but that's exactly how I felt and how I found. So the point of that is, with that experience, and I'm still retaining my home base, therefore, I'm not be bothered. That's one confirmation. The other is that I can use my mind clearly without losing the base. That's a good finding, that I'm not just switching one and the other, but I can possibly bridge those two universes in one, depending upon the situation. And that's the main point that I wanted to share in this video, that possibly we have those faculty. And with that, we can navigate our life better. The guarantee of how I navigate doesn't happen, without going through the actual experience. So what I'm sharing is just an example of what I felt and going through this. And more I feel the compassion, openness, let Amida to take over, or let the calm and quiet mind to have the good awareness of being, so that you can connect to the root of who I am with the blissful sensation. Again, that's the home base, the Garden of Eden, I might call it. But with the mind, with it, so far as mind is detached but observed. So it goes back to my video long time ago. I talked about the mirror mind. That's one type of the wisdom I find and meaningful. So all this stuff, the experience, the journey, experience of awakening, and symptom of it, and the other stuff of the mirror mind, melting into the nature, connecting to the nature, relating to Shin Buddhism and Mykonin's experience like Tai Chi and others, as well as Meister Eckhart Tolle, talking about the mind is the game. You want to go into the internal direction connected to, he doesn't use the word the root of who you are, but basically spiritual awakening is he's talking about. But even after awakening, the symptom of the mind and the home base, the universe of the universe, the big functioning of the law of nature, including how it functions in wisdom or compassion, is at our root. And that's my finding, and we can navigate life even though there's a complexity, as Sapolsky is talking about in his videos and lectures at Stanford. There are lots of issues about how mind may jump around. But at the same time, he's talking about the feasibility of what may come if we know what's going on and what needs to be done. But there's the issue coming back from the point of view of the religion and the actual examples and the expression, and tied to my experience of it. So this is just the point to share where I am, how I got here, how I perceive it subjectively, but it gives me a sense that also possibility of being able to share with others, because I came from the same background from the younger days to have a question about the religion and what does it mean, what is Zen. And it took time to figure out lots of stuff. But it is feasible, and in today's world and so many things happening and unknowns, I believe this is one angle, maybe one of the most important possibilities for us individuals, but even as a human race, as Eckhart Tolle talked about, to reconnect to where we came from, Garden of Eden, beyond the word, but possibly with feeling, imagination, and exemplifying that with your experience of this and that, and synthesizing those experiences and convincing what is happening, relating to the source of power from the universe, whatever the term is, or the God. And more we find the relief from the suffering and creative thought and be able to relate to the blissful sensation, amazing miracles happening in us, around us. I think that might be something that we can explore and go through and find even fun in the process, to know more about ourselves, the feasibility, possibility, and what may come. My journey is not finished. I felt like this is like ultimate state of being, but I'm sure my mind may throw more different screwballs this way and that way, or maybe I have some health issues or business issue or relationship or finance issue. You never know. But if we know vertical or internal direction and horizontal or external dimension or society's dimension, and the game element of how we may be able to deal with it, with light-hearted approach, but connected to the root of who we are, I think there may be a very interesting journey you may find in this process. And I hope that I keep sharing. If it triggers you any interest, please let me know. Everyone is different, but having gone through my exploration and up and down and suffering and coming out of suffering, there may be something we may be able to connect with each other. I call it the new hero's journey, in the process to live our life the best we can. Thank you.